Hey, Ashley.
Hey KJ.
So today we're going to be talking about punishment and discipline. What do you think about that?
Yes, that's a really good topic, and I have a lot of thoughts to share.
Me too. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Fiercely Gentle podcast.
Gentle parenting is not just about how we respond to our kids. It's also about who we are becoming as parents.
So many of us were raised in traditional homes and were taught to listen and comply. But now we want to do things differently. I'm KJ Altoff.
And I'm Ashley Kanazowicz. We're two imperfect moms trying to navigate parenting, overcome our triggers, and share what we're learning so you don't have to feel so alone.
Let's come together and learn how to become more fierce in our values so that we can stay gentle in our parenting.
This is Fiercely Gentle. So, what is the difference between punishment and discipline?
Well, I can tell you my definition of it, but before I do that, I'm going to read an official definition of what punishment is. And punishment is the infliction of some kind of pain or loss upon a person for a misdeed.
Oh,
I know, reading that definition, it sounds pretty bad. I mean, it is pretty bad. If you think about it, punishment, like to punish somebody, it is to cause them pain. It is
yeah.
to either emotionally or physically, if we're talking about it in the parenting world, right?
Mhm.
Because what do you think about when you hear the word punish your child? You know, you're spanking them, you're
Yelling.
yelling at them, scaring them, threatening them, taking something
Hmm.
away, putting them into a timeout, right? All of those experience have a
Yeah. Isolation,
negative,
fear.
yeah, a negative impact on a child, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
um, punishment. So when we talk about punishment and discipline, punishment is a form of discipline,
Hmm.
but not all discipline has to be in the form of punishment.
When you think of it, to inflict pain, that's the wording in the definition, right? To inflict pain,
Hmm.
that implies that you are intentionally causing pain. And that's the message that they're going to receive, that
Hmm.
I deserve pain
Hmm.
because of what I've done. And that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So many of us,
Yeah.
that was our form of discipline. That's what we knew growing up.
And
And
that's how things get normalized, right? Because
mhm,
it's how it's always been. And no one stops to question whether this should be normal or whether it's productive
right.
or helpful or
Hmm.
maybe harmful.
So when you think about it, as we're transitioning to a more gentle parenting approach and the misconceptions with gentle parenting, because a lot of people think, well, gentle parents don't discipline their kids. And that's not true. We don't punish our kids.
Hmm.
It's important to discipline kids. It's our way of
Hmm.
helping kids learn and to teach them what behaviors are appropriate, what behaviors are not appropriate. If we didn't discipline kids, that would be permissive parenting. That's basically just letting kids do whatever they want and get away with
Exactly.
whatever behavior they want, to display. And that's not gentle parenting. We want to discipline our kids, but we do so in a way that's not going to cause them harm,
Hmm.
shame, a feeling of rejection, a feeling of abandonment. We want them to learn in a way that feels good so
Hmm.
that they make the right choices for the right reasons. We want them to make choices because they know internally this is the right choice, not I need to make this choice so I don't get hurt
Right.
or I don't lose my parents' love or because they'll be disappointed in me or
Right.
whatever. Those are not the reasons that we want our kids to be making choices from.
It's almost like we have to pick between critical thinking and problem solving versus obedience.
Yeah, obedience, and that is exactly tied to punishment, right? If you
Hmm.
if you think about the word punishment, it just sounds so
Harsh.
negative and harsh. Yeah, and it really is a tactic for somebody to gain control over another person, to
Right.
overpower them, right? If you cause somebody enough pain, your hope is to lead them to submission
Hmm.
and so that they listen to you and they are obedient to you and
And
they
not be
follow
free
your
thinkers,
direction,
not make decisions for themselves.
right? And that's not how we want to parent our kids. We don't want to have control over them. We want to actually parent them in a way that empowers them. not
Yes.
in a way that puts out their light
Yeah.
because they're afraid that their behavior might again cause harm to them and put them
Hmm.
in in a survival state.
So I homeschool my children, and there was this one like character quality curriculum that we were working through. And one of the unit studies was on obedience. And I started to teach it because it was in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like where it was going at all.
Mm.
And it didn't feel right to teach my kids obedience in the way that it was being taught.
Like
It
it was
got
teaching
me,
your kids how to be obedient or
yeah.
okay.
It got me thinking that if I am teaching my kids to do what I say just because I say it, no rhyme or reason, I don't give them a why, we don't talk it out, they don't come to the decision themselves, and they're trained to do what I say just because I've told them to, then when they're older, who else are they going to listen to
Mm-hmm.
blindly without questioning it?
Mm-hmm.
Who else are they going to obey that they shouldn't be obeying simply because they weren't taught to think and
Right.
question and challenge and do what feels right for themselves? Because
Yeah.
when we teach them to obey, hopefully we have their best interests
Yeah.
at heart. And I think that's where obedience does come from.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do what's best for them, and we want them to just do what we say because we know what they should be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't grow those critical thinking skills, they could be obeying the wrong people for the wrong reasons when they're young adults. They
Yes.
could fall into some dangerous relationships and not really even be able to recognize it because they've been taught, their brain has been taught to just do as they're told.
Yeah.
That like vision of the future really scared me. And so I closed the book and put the curriculum away.
Like, no, thank you. But that's
Yeah.
exactly the approach of the authoritarian parenting
Yep.
is they rely on punishments to get their kids to comply and listen
Hmm.
and to be obedient. But exactly what you said, it's teaching kids to make choices based on their external factors.
What might happen to them if they don't
Who
follow
I
the
need to
rules?
listen to whoever has the most power. I have to listen to them because
Hmm.
they're in charge. And, basically you've been trained to just listen or you'll get in trouble. And so
Yep.
you're right. That is how they start thinking. Their behavior starts to reflect, okay, I have to behave a certain way so I don't get in trouble.
Yep.
Versus if we teach kids to learn in a way that's not threatening their sense of safety,
Hmm.
they can start to trust their own instincts because we are again empowering them to make choices that don't harm them,
Yep.
and we're trying to teach them, okay, this is not the right choice. This is why, to help them
Yep.
understand. We help them understand our values, kindness. This isn't kind. We don't treat people this way because it's not kind, and we need to treat people with kindness, So then when they are on their own, they can make their own choices. If I do this, am I being kind or is this unkind, right? Like
Hmm.
they're not basing it off of, well, what is this person gonna do to me if I behave this way? They're really learning how to make those good choices on their own.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
we already talked a little bit about the harm in using punishment. We covered quite a bit of it, but can you think of anything else that might be harmful?
Yeah, well, for me, two things I think come to mind. The first is that when you punish your child, you are not stopping them from having bad behaviors for the rest of their lives. You are not stopping them from making mistakes. Whether you punish them or not, they are inevitably going to continue to make mistakes throughout their life. What you are doing is that you're teaching them that when they do make those mistakes, you might not be the safest person for them to turn to.
Mm,
When they make a mistake and they're already feeling bad about that, do they want to come to their parent who's going to yell at them, punish them, spank
mhm.
them, ground them, say, I told you so? Or are they going to learn to hide their mistakes, lie about their mistakes, turn to some other person or some other form of coping because they don't have that safe space? Which brings me to my second point. it builds a lot of shame and a very low self-esteem when the pattern that's being repeated to them is when I do quote unquote bad things, I deserve something
Mhm.
bad
Mhm.
to happen to me. And bad things already happen. We'll talk about natural consequences another time. We'll dive into that deeper another time.
Mhm.
But natural consequences happen and they are actually very effective for
Yeah.
teaching cause and effect to small children. But when you have a punishment that has nothing to do with the mistake, they're completely unrelated. They're not learning from that mistake. They're just learning that when they do something wrong, they deserve bad treatment
Yeah.
and it makes them feel shame. And fun fact, it's actually impossible for children, and I'm pretty sure even adults, to learn when their brain goes into fight or flight mode. And
Mhm.
so when their brain does that, there's this switch that turns off and it disallows them to actually learn.
Mhm.
It is physically impossible for them to learn from that mistake in that scenario.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what they are going to learn from is the emotion that that punishment caused them. So they're going to relate things like fear to making mistakes or
Mhm.
panic or aggression, right? Right? Because it's fight or flight. So flight would be fear, panic, shame, hiding. But then fight would be fighting, aggression,
Mhm.
anger, outbursts,
Throwing things, slamming
throwing things.
doors,
Yep.
yelling, talking back. Mhm.
Yeah, they're going to naturally have those responses because they are reacting to the emotion that the punishment is giving them,
Yep.
and they're physically incapable of learning for next
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, that's such a good point because when our bodies, even as adults, when our bodies go into fight or flight mode, that's when we lose control and we are yelling at our
Yep.
kids, right? Because we're not in the logical thinking part of our brain. We are in the survival in our survival instinct, like you said. And you think about it with kids, it happens the same for kids too, but that part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, which we were talking about, isn't even fully developed yet. So
Right.
we have these high expectations for kids to behave well, but when they feel emotional or when they are put in a fight or flight state, that part of their brain that does process their executive functioning and logical reasoning is not even fully developed yet. So they're completely acting out of their emotions completely.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense that you can't learn from that state because your
Yeah.
body is trying to protect you and trying to prepare you to run away or to fight. And it's not going to spend energy helping you learn from that moment or make better
Yeah.
choices in the future or process or reflect or anything like that. That's not, that wouldn't be helpful if you were actually if there was actually a threat in the room.
I'm smiling as you're saying all of that because it's just so ironic that we as parents yell and lose our cool because we are triggered into
Hmm.
fight or flight mode. But then when we yell at our kids and we trigger them into fight or flight mode, we expect obedience.
Hmm.
We aren't
Yeah.
even controlling our fight or flight mode, but then we expect them to.
Right. With
And it's
underdeveloped brains. Like we have higher
right.
expectations for kids than we do of ourselves, which is just
Exactly.
crazy. Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If we yell, if we hit,
That's us disciplining. That's us
and then they
that's us
hit, and we
parenting.
say, don't do that.
Yeah. It's completely hypocritical of us
So,
for
that
sure.
being said, why do you think parents feel like they need to punish?
I think that parents feel like they need to punish their kids because that's all they know. And I know we
Hmm.
touched on this a little bit earlier, but if you were raised in a traditional home and you were spanked, you were put on timeout, you were grounded, that's all you knew. And
Yep.
so we behave in similar ways that were modeled to us. So if that was how our parents modeled discipline, that's our default. That's how we
Hmm.
think we need to discipline our kids. You can
And
you can literally envision the cycle that continues to be passed down from
yep.
each generation, right? And that's what's amazing with our generation because we really are the first generation of parents who were raised so strongly one way and have decided, no, I am not going to continue to
Hmm.
parent in that way. And we are learning so much, like different ways to parent. We're learning how to heal ourselves. We're learning how to face our past childhood traumas.
Hmm.
No other generation before us did the work. And most families didn't, right? A
Right.
majority now are in our generation. And I think parents, number one, they use punishment because they feel a lack of control in the
Yeah.
moment. And they think, they're triggered, they're in a survival state, and they think, I just need to gain control back because not having control feels unsafe. It feels too scary, and it feels like I'm not doing a good job as a
Hmm.
parent, and it feels
Yeah.
like I'm failing. All of these things from our childhood come up in those moments when we get triggered by a behavior, and our automatic response is to shut it down.
For me, that's when I start to slide more
Oh, me
into
too.
punishment atmosphere is
Yeah.
this feeling of losing control. And so I
Mhm.
notice that when I'm in those overstimulated moments where everything just feels like it's out of control,
Yeah.
I can feel this sense of I need to regain the power and shut this down.
hmm
For
Okay,
now,
so what are
yeah.
some other ways if we don't want to use punishment in our parenting anymore? What's the alternative? What does positive
Yeah.
discipline look like?
Well, just like we gave the terrifying definition
Yeah.
of what punishment is, the actual definition of discipline is to teach or to
hmm
guide. Where punishment is intentionally giving pain, to discipline is to intentionally teach or
hmm
intentionally guide. So we can focus on skill building instead of punishing. But in order to skill build, you have to recognize the situation for what it is. It's not just disobedience, it's not just defiance, it's not bad behavior. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but there is a need behind a behavior and there's a reason behind a mistake or a bad decision. And so if we not in the moment because in the moment they need to just process through their feelings, but then once everybody's calmed down, we can come back and revisit and have a conversation about what happened, what the right thing is if we sit down and we talk through it and we help them come up with some ideas of how to do it differently or give them some examples.
Yeah.
I know for my son, who's freshly 6, in my mind, he's still 5, he still struggles with impulse control.
Yeah.
And so he'll just like fling stuff across the house. And I'm like, buddy, or he'll like step on his tablet. And I'm like, buddy, why? And he's like, I don't know. And he's not doing it on purpose. He's not doing
hmm
it because he wants to break it. Like he loves his things. He loves his toys. He just has poor impulse control at this
Yeah.
age right now. And so that's something that's out of his control. And I
hmm
have to help him kind of have like body and spatial awareness, you
Yeah.
know? I think one of the most important ones is just communication. Because even if you can't figure out the right need or the right skill that needs to be built, or, if you're fumbling your way through it and you don't really have the right language or the right tools,
hmm
just open communication is going to teach them way more in that situation.
Yeah.
Teaching them that it's safe to communicate with you, it's safe to be honest with you, it's safe to make mistakes with you. I feel
Yeah.
like if you can at least handle that, you'll be on the right path of discipline.
Okay, so Ashley, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from this episode?
Yeah, ironically, I feel like my biggest takeaway is what do I want their takeaway to be? When they make a mistake, when they don't respond the way I feel like they should, or when they do something unsafe or disrespectful or whatever, what do I want them to take away from that situation? Do I want them to take shame, fear, self loathing away from that situation? Do I want them to take away that mom will get mad at me next time, or I shouldn't tell her this next time? Or do I want them to take away that I understood and I was there for them when they were struggling? And do I want them to take away a skill that they can learn and grow and build for the next time. And then the next time, if they get it wrong again, we can keep working on building that skill.
Yeah.
So that's a takeaway. What do you think yours is?
I think my takeaway from this episode is, what do we want our kids to normalize in their childhood?
Yes.
What kind of interactions do we want them to have the most of, where they might not even remember it day to day, but when they're adults, they'll remember what their childhood was like. They might not remember specific moments, but they'll remember the feeling, right?
Right.
Do we want them to feel surprised when we do lash out at them? Because that's not normal. That's not how mom normally reacts. Or do we want them to feel surprised when we are kind and respectful to them in those moments? So those are our takeaways. Let us know what yours are. We can continue this conversation over on Instagram. Send us a DM or send us a message on Facebook. Thank you, Ashley, for this chat today.
Yeah, thanks, KJ. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for listening. We're grateful to have you in this community.
Parenting this way isn't easy. We're all learning, showing up every day, reflecting, repairing, and continuing to grow.
If anything in today's conversation resonated with you, or if you have a question or topic you'd like us to talk through in future episodes, we would love to hear from you. We'll share our contact information down below in the description.
Until next time, be kind to yourself. And remember, you are a fiercely gentle parent.